Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest for you today. We have Michael Forman. He is a leading expert at making networking both fun and profitable and has authored the book Networking Unleashed while boosting profitability for numerous corporations through his dynamic presentations. As a Desert Storm veteran who now resides in Cumming, Georgia, he loves speaking, but he cherishes his wife and two sons above all else. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
And we're glad to have you here. We're going to dive into it in just a moment, but as is customary in the show, we do like to have a little icebreaker. And the question for you today is, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
It's pretty simple because Bugs Bunny is my cartoon of choice. Nobody messes with Bugs Bunny. Do you ever notice that, you may start with him, but he'll always finish it? So that's always my go-to cartoon character because really you don't mess with him unless you really want to, get it in the end.
I like that one. I like that one. And just before we dive into your backstory, what is procrastination for you? How do you define it, and what does it mean to you personally?
Well, procrastination to me means putting off what you should be doing today. Okay, so instead of doing it, just getting it over with, procrastination is a long time ago. My mother gave me a little poem. Procrastination is my sin. It brings me endless sorrow. I really must stop doing it. In fact, I'll stop tomorrow. And that's basically what procrastination is for me.
I like that little quote. It's easy to remember. I like that.
Yeah.
And we all know there's no like silver bullet or anything. But what would be your secret sauce to overcoming procrastination?
Mind over matter. It's just I've been through the military. I've been through owning my own businesses, and I've realized that, if you put off till tomorrow what you can do today, there is so much more that you have to do that all you're doing is just ganging up everything you have to do into like a small time period. So it's better off to do what you have to do. And even if you don't like what you're going to have to do it. Because A, you'll just get it out of the way. But B, that will leave you the room to go on to the next thing that you have to do.
I like that. And actually, that segues really good actually into my next question for you. It's not really a question so much as, I'd be interested in, our listeners would be interested in hearing a little bit about you, your background, how you got to be where you are today.
All right. About 100 years ago, I was in the Air Force, for about 9 years. I'm a Desert Storm vet, as you had mentioned, but I found out early because I was young, but I was higher ranking than a lot of the guys and girls that was in my unit. And I had to give them orders, but I was younger than they were. So that put me in a very difficult position, not difficult position, but a strange position. And I learned that you had to talk to them a certain way. Then when I got out, I went into my own business. I had graphic design studios. I had pizzeria, restaurants, things like that. And all of this was talking to customers, your employees, to vendors, and each person you had to talk to in a different way to get the optimum results. So when I finally went into the mortgage business, I went corporate and I was going on and off stages, and I realized that networking is a key way to get yourself involved. And yes, you not only make business or get business, you can do well for somebody else. You can do good. And really, that's the main thrust in networking. Networking is giving more and receiving less. So the more that you give, when you go to a networking event, you don't look for a sale. You don't look to see what you can get out of these people. You look to see what kind of a resource you can be for everybody else.
Yeah, that reminds me of a saying. I don't know where it came from, so don't ask me where it came from. But you have the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do for you. But it sounds like you've got sort of the same mentality in your networking, is the platinum rule, which is do more for others than you would have them do for you.
Absolutely. That's the way to get ahead today. The days of building your customer base really is passé. Ever since the pandemic, it's about 4 years now, people lost their minds. They forgot how to communicate with one another. They think everything is through the cell phone, through texting, through Zoom, and they lost that feeling. You can't get a vibe of the room, of the person you're dealing with, unless you're person to person networking. And that's where your platinum rule comes in. Because when you walk into an event like that, you look to see how much you can do for somebody else before getting anything back.
That's really interesting, and I guess it's a different way to look at it. And I'm sure some people might be sitting there scratching their heads and thinking, well, wait a second. If I'm thinking about how I can help them before getting anything back, I mean, then, how I can help them with my business or how I can help them just in general.
Well, it's kind of a mixture of both, because after, I have a whole routine of what you do when you meet somebody or meet a group of people at a networking event, what you say to the people, so on and so forth. But at the end, you're really saying to that person, your prospective client, what can I do to make you more successful? How can I be a good referral source for you? And if you've done everything properly, you'll get his business card or her business card, and you write down the information on the back the way you should, but he'll ask you, what do you do? And then you go on and tell them, and then you always have to have, because everybody there has a problem, and you have to be the problem solver. You have to have something with your arsenal that will solve their problem, but it's your job to figure that out.
And actually, I've had this discussion with a couple of other business owners recently. Actually, I'm part of a few different networking groups, and I was speaking to one pest control company here locally, and they said that actually they mirrored your sentiments actually too. Since the pandemic, most of their business has actually been from referrals of people that they've referred business to. So they've been getting referrals from plumbers or attic people that install things, roofers and things like that. So would you suggest just creating a Rolodex of different businesses that you can refer out?
Well, since you've been in business, you know that gold is by your referral sources. Having referrals is golden, okay? Because that is the best, most cost-effective way for you to get business. Now, they might be great in getting referrals and not have to advertise and everything else, but the same thing goes. He still has to go to those other businesses because it's not one-sided. He has to, in turn, give them referrals. And so, because that's how it all works. If you do it long enough, you'll realize that it does come back to you. And, having those referrals is key. There's another saying, people love to buy, but they hate to be sold to. Okay. So, and that resonates with many business owners. So you have to go around and you have to figure out how to discuss or lay out what you do without having to sell them. And if you did your job correctly, they're going to ask you. It's like your 30-second elevator speech. It's okay, so you don't want it to sound canned. Well, what's your primary objective with that 30-second elevator speech? Well, your primary objective is to have them ask you a question. So I've always taught your 30-second elevator speech really isn't 30 seconds. It's 5. You're saying just enough for them to say, well, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or that sounds very interesting. Some sort of a reaction so that you can come out with the other half.
And I'm gonna just a good that would dive right into one of the biggest things, and I personally went through this as well because I identify as kind of an introvert, and you mentioned it, you hit the nail on the head. Since the pandemic, a lot of people have been more online, and maybe they are introverted. What tips would you give somebody to uh, more confidently start going to these events and interact?
Well, you said it yourself, you're an introvert. Okay, so there are a lot of different, it's primarily the same way of doing things with only a certain twist. Okay, so how do you get started? You get started by joining your Chamber of Commerce. You get started by going online to meetup.com or something like that. There's 1,000 different websites to help you, to assist you in getting those networking meetings. Now, if you're not very good, or if you're an introvert, you start small. Okay. You go to those after hours meetings and you start small and you say, there's 40 people there, and you just don't become a wallflower. But that's a very slow way of getting involved. When you're an extrovert and you've been to a few of them, then you can set your sights on something larger. But there is a difference. When you go to a networking event, you walk through the door and you're slammed with like 300 people. It's like, oh no, what do? It's very simple. First, take a deep breath. Okay. And then just go in. You walk up to a table. There's usually 4 or 5 people there. You don't say a word. You listen. You listen for the conversation. Is this a conversation that I want to become involved with? If it's not, if you haven't said anything yet, bow out very politely, go to the next table. If it is, well, then you wait for the conversation to come around to you. Now, remember, you are the professional. You're the expert in your field. So what you say, you have to think about it a little bit, okay? It shouldn't come out something like Bugs Bunny, but you should come out with something a bit more intelligent. And if it resonates with, let's say, 2 of the people at the table, then direct your conversation towards those people. And then you get into that whole conversation. But I am something called FORM, FORM, family, occupation, recreation, and message. Okay? Because once you're talking with somebody, you can speak about their family, their husband, wife, sister, brother, son, daughter, their occupation. What do they do? What do other people do for that same situation? Recreation. You have to find some sort of a level where you can speak with him. And once you find that level, people love to speak about themselves. They love it. They'll talk and talk and talk and talk. Okay? So that's the whole thing. So what you do is you're building up that level of trust. Know you, like you, trust you. They're going to do business with you. Know you, fine, everybody knows you. You're very popular. Like you, that narrows it down just a little bit. Okay? So know you, like you, and then trust you. Sometimes you have 30 seconds to build that trust. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, a half an hour, or an hour. Okay, you don't know. Form helps you build that trust. And once you achieve that trust, then you can have them speak about themselves, have them speak about what they do. And you say to them, I like you. I like the way you do business and what you're selling. How can I make you more successful? How can I be a good referral source for you? It usually blows them away, but it gives you his card. He says how you can do it and everything else. And on the back of that card, write down the date, the name of the function, and something you spoke about. Because if you did your job correctly, they'll then turn around and say, well, that's great for helping me. What do you do? How can I help you? And so everything comes around. So now I used to, when I was in the mortgage industry, my God, I used to go to these networking events. I used to come home with a shoebox filled with business cards. 2 weeks later, ask me who was on those business cards. I wouldn't have a clue. But in a 3 hour event, you shouldn't come home with more than 15 or 20 business cards, because that means that you took the time and you honestly will try to network with those people. And then there's the follow-up, and that's a whole nother conversation. But that's how you build that relationship, or start to build that relationship. And then you move on.
I like what you said there, about having 200 business, because I mean, it's happened to me. I've been to, not even networking events, but just seminars, right? Where you have those mixers, and 200 person, at the end of the day, you got 200 cards, and I wonder how many of those even got anywhere, right? When you, and that brings me around to like a second question then, I guess. How proactive should you be about, leaving a card just somewhere random?
Well, only leave your card with somebody that you truly want to have that relationship with. There's the old mindset. Well, let me just give you my card, because just in case you may need my services or what I have to sell. Okay. I'm not selling widgets. Okay. I need 3 widgets. Here's the money. There you go. That's a customer. A relationship is something a little bit more. And the way that I describe what a relationship is, let's say you're going through a supermarket and I see you. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Well, how you doing, Mike? Oh, it's great. All right. I'll see you soon. That's a customer. A relationship. Hey, Chris, how you doing? How's your wife? I heard your son was in Little League. What's he playing? Which base? Did he get hurt? Oh, I'm sorry. I hope he gets better. Something. And you have, let's say, that 5-minute conversation. And then you move on. That's building your relationship. That's putting me a step above everybody else that has to sell what I sell. Because you're going to remember me. You're going to remember that I remembered your wife and your son.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know that in this current economic climate, I know there's a lot of, trying to choose my words here. There's a lot of, I guess, very transactional thinking, right? Because there are, just thinking about going back to my pest control guy, well, maybe not the pest control guy, but I mean, there's, 10,000 lawyers, 10,000 plumbers. So, how do you stand out in those relationships? So you're saying that you develop those relationships, and would you take that business card that you talk to those people? Would you, even go so far as to like send them like a holiday card, or is that too?
Well, there is a whole that I put in place for the following. Okay, so here it is in a nutshell. Let's say you have 15 cards and you go back home or to the office, whichever it may be. You're going to write a thank you email to each and every one of them. Okay. Hey, Chris, this is Mike. I saw you tonight at such and such an affair. Thank you very much for giving me your time. Hope to see you soon, Michael. That's it. Quick email. So now you have my email. The next morning, here's the kicker. You write a handwritten thank you note. That's right. Handwritten thank you note. Hey, Chris, this is Mike. I saw you at such and such an event, such and such date. We spoke about your wife or your son, your daughter, whatever. I hope everything works out well. Thank you for your time, Mike. I put my business card in it and I send it to you. Now, you, in about 3 days, receive this thank you note, a handwritten thank you note, and it will usually impress the hell out of you. Okay, because I took the time. And what other mail do you receive in your office? That's pretty much it. Okay. So then if you still haven't responded to me, I write you an email about 4 days later, because I have to give you time to receive the thank you note. Hey, Chris, I saw you on such and such date, such and such an event. We spoke about your wife, your child, whatever. Now notice I say the very same thing every time, but I'm just adding a little bit more at the end. Hey, such time. Listen, I noticed that Tuesday and Wednesday of next week is open. Would any of those days be good for you? Let me know. Now, from that first email, you have about a 20% chance of getting a response. After that thank you note, there's about a 50% chance. After that second email, we upped it to about 65% chance. Now, if you still haven't responded to me, remember, I'm looking for a response. Positive, negative, doesn't matter. I'm looking for a response. Hey, Chris, this is Mike. I saw you such date, such as we spoke about your wife, your daughter, or whatever. I told you that Tuesday and Wednesday of next week were open. It seems that Tuesday has become very busy for me. How's Wednesday at 3? And if you still haven't responded to me, you probably will never respond to me. Okay? Because that usually means no. But you can give it one last shot. Hey, Chris, this is Mike. I saw you on such and date, such as time, such as Ben, right? I told you Tuesday and Wednesday were open, but Tuesday was busy. Wednesday seems to be closing up. So if you would like to join me for a cup of coffee, let me know, Michael. Now, if you still haven't responded to me, that means that you're not going to. So what do you do with your information? You put it into your CRM. And you put you on a drip campaign. Nothing elaborate. Just something to keep my name and information in front of you once a month. A newsletter, a drip campaign, whatever. Okay? But just touch base like once a month. Now, I speak on many stages. I go across the country and I speak with event planners. About 7 months ago, 8 months ago, I've been emailing this event planner for 8 months. No response, nothing. It's like she's dead in the water. All of a sudden, last month, got an email from her like we've been talking for the last 10 years. Hey, Mike, how you doing? I have an event coming up. You think you would be interested? It's like nothing. So that is the magnificence of a CRM. They always have you in front of them. And there's other ways. Listen, when I was in the mortgage industry, you want realtors. I'm from New York. In my county, there was about 3,000 realtors, but only 2% of them were those high-end realtors. And they have 3 more. Well, I said, okay, I want to become one of those 3, but there's no way that you can just get right in. So it's very simple. I sent her a shot glass. And she opened it up, a little note from me, said, hi, Margot, this is Mike. Just give me a shot. That's all I asked. She was hysterical. She called me up the same day. And she said, Michael, listen, I'm very loyal to my 3 mortgage people. But as soon as one of them falters, screws up, I said, that's all I ask. You do that to enough of them, and you'll get in. So there are different ways of keeping in touch. But that was always my favorite.
No, I really like that example. I heard something similar from he was actually final expense insurance salesman, and he had coasters, something like that. And actually, I was going to ask you about that, because where do you sit on these fancy? I don't know if you've seen these before. These sort of fancy business cards, where I had one given to me one time that was in the shape of like a couch for an interior designer, or all these different things. I mean, they're fairly costly, but I mean, in your experience, well, much like the shot glass, I guess, but we're just talking about the business cards. Do you think that is a viable avenue to explore?
I don't see it. Because think about who you're giving it to. If it's a different shape than a regular business card, how are they going to keep it? Okay, so they're not going to put it where their normal business cards go. It's like a separate book, like a B&I book, and you have business cards. Well, where would you put a thing like that? Oh, I'll put it on my desk. It looks pretty. On the desk, never to be seen or heard from again. So it looks nice when you first give it, but how are they going to keep it afterwards? That's how my thinking. So I would just make it a regular shape and size of a business card, but make the business card more elaborate, something good on the business card.
Actually, that segues into my next sort of interesting question. I've been toying with this idea myself, and I guess it's kind of akin to the shot glass, but and this is for all the authors out there that actually have books. Have you ever considered going to one of these networking events and as sort of like a promotional type idea, either putting your business card inside like a signed, personalized copy of the book to those people? I mean, we're only talking about 15.
Done that.
Do you think something like that could?
I've done that. I've done that. I've spoke to, there's a room with just 10 people in it. And in there, I just brought a copy of my book. I signed everyone. I put my business card. And I waited to the end of my presentation, and they all said, how can I get in touch with you? How and everything. I said, look, I'm going to give as a gift for everybody. Here's a copy of my book. I've done it where I've had audience of 50 to 75. I said, look, everybody put your business card in this glass bowl because you're going to win a copy of my book. Okay. Then, of course, I have all their cards. Okay, so there's different ways of doing it. So that's one way, as long as you have that small number, unless you don't mind giving away 50 copies of your book, it's plus or minus the other way. But I don't use my book for selling, really. Enough of them have sold, but I use it more as a lead-in, as a segue, because when I wrote the book, it was everything about networking, but I've learned so much since then that I'm ready to make a next book with all the new stuff that I encountered.
I like that. I like that there too. And I mean, too. We don't write books to sell them anyway. I mean, never really, honestly, unless you're like a fiction writer or something. There's usually not much in that. Just swinging back to the topic of the book, though, because I love talking about procrastination, and the old saying is that 98% of writing is procrastination and 2% is actually doing it. How true is that in your case?
Well, when I wanted to start my podcast, I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted myself to be perfect. I wanted my guests to be perfect. I wanted what I was speaking about perfect. And the more people I spoke to, my mentors, the more of them I spoke to, the more everybody just said, forget all that. Just start. Just begin. Just do it. And then when you are 25 episodes in, you're going to look back to your first 5 and go, that was me? My God, I was awful. I was horrible. But I started. And now I'm up, I guess, I have about 10 people. I've launched up to 7 interviews. And each time it gets better and better. So procrastination, it's true for books, for podcasts, for anything you want to do. My only suggestion is to just do it.
And what do you suppose was, I mean, we just do it, right? But what do you think was your biggest challenge when you were getting started with your book?
With my book or the podcast?
Either or. I mean, I'm interested to hear both the book and the podcast because they're two different animals.
They are very different animals. Well, the book I put off because I kept on saying, this chapter could be a little bit better. No, this chapter, let me rewrite this chapter. Oh, no, I didn't say that right because I should do it this way. And, oh, you know what? I want to put a story in it, so I want to put it up front. No, it was in the middle. No, I'm going to put it up front. And all those things wavering back and forth. And I finally just said, listen, make a decision. Because procrastination is not making a decision, it's putting it off. So I have to make a decision and stick with it. And so that's how the book came out. The podcast was almost the same way. I'm like, it can't be perfect. No matter what I do, it's not going to be perfect. So should I try to make it as perfect as I want or as conversational and as free as I want? Well, that's the way that I went. because getting it perfect really is not my style. Okay. It's having the conversation. So that's each one. And my background, as you can see, this is for my podcast because my 30-second, I help professionals network and communicate more effectively and efficiently, thus creating more profits. Because if you do it correctly, effectively, and efficiently, by next month, you'll increase your profits. So that's why I started the podcast and did this and so on and so forth.
Actually, that's really good, and I love that you're all about networking and connections because my next question to you is it relates to AI. Some people are using now. There's new tools in your email. There's new tools on your phone to answer your and how would I write this text? How would I write this email? What's your view on using those to spruce it up?
Well, I'm a bit of old school in me. When I write an email or a notice or something like that, I write the email and then I put it through Chat GPT. I say, okay, polish this, make it like an intelligent person wrote it, not me. All right. And then it just changed, and it changes it enough where it still sounds like me, but better. And that's really the only thing that I use it for.
And just going into the other tools of the trade, are there any tools like you mentioned? There's a CRM. I imagine that you have a go-to that you might that you use, your favorite.
Well, the tools, I use HubSpot. HubSpot is a CRM, good CRM. And listen, the more you want to use, the more you'll pay. And the more you pay, the better off your everything will be. So you can keep going forever and ever and ever. But I use HubSpot just for my CRM, for getting the emails, keeping everything organized, because everything that comes through my email goes through HubSpot and it keeps it organized that way. But as far as getting the word out, using it for networking, I use LinkedIn. That's my number one go-to place. But such as my podcast episodes, I publish on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel. Then I go through all the normal things of RSS.com, Apple, Spotify, the whole thing. But, there's a lot of different components. It's managing them and keeping them together is really the key part. Okay, that's the most important part. And you can't procrastinate. Okay, you can't put it off because, last week I took the time. Right, I did very little each day when it came to work. I'm paying for it this week. Okay, because I put it off. I have the business owner's mentality saying, I don't work, I don't get paid, no matter what the circumstance. Okay, so, but this week I'm paying for it. So I'll work till, midnight.
Michael, this has been a great conversation. It's a lot of great insights. We are coming up pretty close to the time. Is there anything that you wished I would have asked but didn't ask, or anything that we didn't cover that you feel we should have covered?
No, just, my biggest question when I'm speaking to large groups, or if I'm going into a company that asks me to come in and help them with networking, the biggest question is introverts versus extroverts. What do you have to do that's different? And what do you have to do? And I give them my whole plan. And then I explain how an introvert can do it just as easily as an extrovert. So that's one thing that I'd rather delve into a little bit more, and then just different ways to get hold of me.
Okay. Well, please. So we went over a little bit about the extrovert there a little while ago. Tell me, how does an introvert, besides taking a breath, just going in and doing it, what's different for them?
Something, it's very easy. Now, I'm an Air Force guy, so I'm going to use that terminology. An extrovert walks up to the table, sees about the conversation, waits for the conversation, comes around to them. Okay. An introvert, I always say, go to these networking events by yourself. Okay. You never go with somebody because they become a crutch. Okay. Whenever things get slower or you get bored, or if you don't want to do something, you go to them and you start talking and doing and something else. Go alone. With an introvert, I say bring somebody. Okay. But a coworker, sister, brother, whatever. Okay. Somebody that knows you, knows what you do and how well you do it. So when the two of you walk up to the table and the conversation comes around, your wingman, because that's what I use as a wingman, your wingman will say, oh, you know what? That's great. You know something? Mike here understands that completely and has something really important to say. So that's your segue into speaking. And for an introvert, it's a lot easier for you to speak than just coming right out. And you do that. And so that wingman goes along with you all throughout the networking event and helps you. Now, you're not automatically become an extrovert. You're going to have to learn. Networking is a skill. It's a skill like everything else, and you have to practice, practice, practice. So your second networking event, your third networking event, your fourth networking event, maybe by the fifth networking event, you can go solo. But the one thing you have to do is start with the networking event. Put it into your calendar. Okay. Every other week, go to another networking event. It could be an after hours, after business hours, group of 10 people. But go, because the more you do, the more you talk about things and how you do things, the better you're going to get.
So, practice, 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 and, take a breath and have a good wingman that knows your business as well as you do and how good you are.
That's it. That's in a nutshell.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, Michael. And just as we are wrapping things up here, what is the best way for people to learn more about you and what you do?
Well, the best way to learn about me and to get hold of me is to go to my website, michaelaforman.com. On there's a contact form, but there's a place where you can find my book. There's also right next to that on my website is a PDF, and that's an abridged version of my book, and that's free. You can just download that and start. Okay, so I'm giving you the avenue to start to begin your networking career, so to speak. Okay, you just go and do that. On there, you'll see my podcast, a blog. I also just completed a digital course in networking, and I will put that up probably this week, and how to go to it, how to get to it, and everything else. But that's the best way to get hold of me, michaelaforman.com. And I usually get back to the person within 24 hours.
Excellent. Well, just to all our listeners, don't worry about writing that down. We will have it in the show notes for you as well. And actually, we'll update the show notes with that course information when it comes out. So you can actually come back to this episode, look at those little tidbits, and get the link to the course when it's released. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being on the show. And to all our listeners, once again, thank you for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.